Hi, welcome to another episode of Profit Partners. I'm here with Mike Begg from AMZ Advisors. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Look, I spoke to your colleague, or I guess your underling, Pavel, with regards to AMZ Advisors. He
Yeah.
sent me a wonderful ad that basically says that they guarantee, a massive increase in sales. Okay, like just phenomenal rocket launch. What do you got? Okay, tell me exactly what AMZ Advisors do. How do you actually rocket launch, a sales career for Amazon businesses?
Yeah. So what we do is, like you said, we take brands and we bring them from about 1 million or more on Amazon to doing more than 10 million a year on Amazon. So that's our specialty, is really figuring out how to actually scale your brand on the platform. What we do is everything from the content SEO creation to make your listings look great and convert well, have high click-through rates, and then the advertising to optimize the placements and maximize the sales. And that, in combination with some outside traffic that we bring to Amazon, is really how we help those brands start scaling.
Okay, so let me ask you this. How does that differ from regular SEO, right? Amazon is its own beast, I'm sure. So how does like an SEO, on Amazon differ from, regular SEO?
So there's a variety of different reasons. I mean, when I do a lot of SEO for our website as well, so I understand it. With Google SEO, for example, keyword density, backlinks, those are all things that are kind of, and obviously quality of the content are all things that kind of come into play when Google determines where your product or where your page ranks on the search engine. That's very different on Amazon. There's some aspects that are similar, but the factors or the metrics they're using are different. So when we look at the products that are ranked higher on product detail pages, they have keywords and they have keyword density and they have high quality listings or they look good. But the factors that actually help determine what ranks higher or lower is your conversion rate and your sales velocity. So, how frequently, when people are coming to your product page, when they search for a keyword, are they buying the product? And then how many sales are you getting per day, and how long have you been getting those sales? And that really helps Amazon. I'm getting the two confused now. Amazon determine what product is most relevant for what keyword search.
Okay, so well, now when you're doing the SEO, right? Like, are you thinking it as, Amazon, or are you thinking as per customer?
It's a combination of both. So the way that we do the SEO is that we really focus on what they're called the root keywords, or what the main keywords are for your product. And then from there, we utilize those as well as long tail keywords to help your product be indexed as well in the Amazon algorithm as possible. We'll also use that through the A plus content in the product descriptions to try to max in the keyword search in the back end to try to maximize your visibility. From the customer side, where we really try to focus on like the quality or like the explanation of the product is in the actual product images. I mean, the bullet points are helpful and some customers do read those, but the reality is most customers just look at the image. And if you're not clearly stating what your product does in the images, then it's going to lead to confusion. They're probably just going to skip over it. I mean, at this point, you can look at product images without even going to the Amazon product detail pages themselves. So having it there and having it be a quick find is extremely important. And when we also talk about mobile optimization, images are the first thing on mobile, bullet points fall way further down. So that's why we try to focus on putting the customer experience piece in the images more than the bullet points.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like I've already talked about like the product detail page with Nick Nichols, who's a partner of ours, with Stan Friedlander, who's a partner of ours, of how important the product detail page is. Now,
Yeah.
what metrics do you look at to optimize, right, the traffic flow to, the customers, I guess not the customer, but I guess the Amazon, the necessary Amazon page, your customer's page, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that.
There's three main metrics that we look at and we measure. And then, well, I'd say they're leading indicator metrics, and then there's obviously the performance metrics on the end. On the performance side, we have things like ACoS, tacos, like how to measure actual profitability from the advertising and from the total sales. But when we're looking at leading indicators, we're looking at our conversion rates, our click-through rates, and the traffic. And if we can see or make improvements in any of those three metrics, it's obviously going to have a significant improvement on the sales for the brand overall. So, for example, conversion rates, if we improve conversion rates on advertising, it's going to signal to the Amazon algorithm that this product is more relevant for this keyword, and it should help us move up the organic ranking on search results, driving more sales there. If we improve click-through rate on our ads, well, now the more people that are seeing our ads are coming to our product detail pages, and if we keep our conversion rates high, then we're going to sell more, and it's just a feedback loop. Same with traffic. We drive more traffic, keep conversion rates, click-through rates high and conversion rates high, it's just going to lead to more revenue. So when we focus on those three metrics is really where you can start figuring out where you have areas for improvement and how you can start driving sales significantly.
So when you guys are looking at, I guess not just, the product details, not just, the actual, product itself, but when you're looking at the metrics as well, right? Are you guys taking the approach, the Moneyball approach, where the more runs you get, the more home runs you're eventually going to get? Or are you looking at, okay, you know what? We need to obviously get more runs, but it's better to get more home runs, meaning people need to click and actually buy the product. At the end of the day, you need to increase sales because people need to buy the product. But at the same time, people need to, get to the site. If they're not going to get to the site, they're not going to buy the product. So which one do you
Exactly.
focus more on?
I would say, I mean, obviously we're extremely focused on sales, but I would say the approach we're taking is kind of twofold. I mean, we have, like I mentioned before slightly, we have root keywords or main keywords, which are going to be the most competitive, the most expensive from an advertising standpoint. And that's where you're going to be throwing a lot of money. You might get conversions, but it's going to be costing you a lot. Now, when we focus on long tail keywords based off of those root keywords, we can start driving revenue on related keywords. And that's where we can really start increasing the money, increasing profitability for us to be a little bit more aggressive on those main keywords, those root keywords. So it's kind of a combination of both. We would focus on the long tail first, try to make those as profitable as possible, and then kind of start moving for, the home runs per se. Uh, what's a good example of one? Charger for iPhone, like a very generic, competitive keyword that a lot of people in the electronics category are competing on.
So when you are developing the actual content, right, do you base it off of whatever the content, like whatever the product is? Like, does it matter what the product is? Do you change how you would then develop, the strategy involved? Or do you have like a mainstream strategy that you use across all categories?
The process is the same, but no, it does. You do need to consider each product's benefits or each product's features. Obviously, if you are claiming something that you don't have in your product, or if you're just ripping off the copy off a competitor listing, there's a very good chance that a customer is going to be upset at some point because your product doesn't do what it says. So it's kind of a combination of a few different things. Like I said, our process, we look at what competitors are using for keywords and content. We look at negative reviews that competitors have and try to find opportunities to differentiate our product from theirs, from those negative reviews. And then we have to actually look at what our product features are and what we can and can't say. So like some categories, there's restricted keywords and things like that. So it's a combination of all of that. And then from there, that's where we're basing the content and how we're creating it.
So Amazon came out with their brand report, and they're trying to crack down on a lot of different people who are very clearly ripping off of other brands. They're not authorized resellers. Are there moments when you get a client and you're like, wow, I cannot work with you because you are clearly going against Amazon's policies?
I would say it's less frequent now than it was in the past. The types of companies we're working with are a little bit bigger and a little bit more established at this point. But it doesn't mean that from time to time, these brands that we have get, or that we're managing, get IP infringements or notifications from Amazon. Most of the time, it's frivolous, and most of the time, it's a competitor trying to take down their listing. But we have seen it before, where there's products that are clearly being knockoffs, or like the owners literally told us that these are knockoffs, and we're just like, "No, we can't work with you on that." So I would say it's improving, or at least the types of clients we're working with is improving maybe, but it is something we've seen from in the past.
Who are your favorite types of clients? Who do you love just coming in and just you just love working on their stuff?
Yeah, so there's a lot here, but ideally clients that are doing more than 1 million a year on Amazon already and have a significant ad budget to scale to help us start scaling. So like significant, meaning like 20, $30,000 a month. That's really where we can start getting a lot of traction immediately to start pushing you. That would be the first thing. Category wise, we work kind of across categories. Electronics is a category that we hate though, so like we just avoid that. It's just a nightmare because it's full of
Wow.
Chinese manufacturers. And when we talk about IP infringements and stuff like that, they're notoriously bad at that. And ideally, if they have presence outside of Amazon, it's even better for us because then we can leverage some of that to help us start growing. So, do they have a big D2C store is important? Are they in retail? If you're in retail, it's a really good opportunity for us to work together because then we can really take off on Amazon. So those are the kind of the different factors we look for. But ideally, yeah, clients doing more than 1 million a year at least is like where our cutoff is.
Can you expand on that more? Like, if they're not just on Amazon and they're on, other platforms as well, or even if they, I guess they have a shop somewhere, how do you leverage that?
How do we leverage the other platforms? So
Yeah.
there's a few different ways that we would do that. With like a D2C website like Shopify or something, ideally you've been building a customer list. So we'd be focused on potentially email marketing to the customer list, potentially targeting them with ads outside of Amazon. Another example might be if your product is well known or your product has some brand awareness already, you might be mentioned in a lot of publications, a lot of blogs, influencer content, influencer marketing, and working with them to drive traffic to Amazon is another good instance of how we would do that. And then in general, paid ads on like Google is another way that we can drive traffic from outside of Amazon. So you know, people are searching for your brand on Google, or searching for a related keyword or a question that's related to the problem you solve. It's a great opportunity for you to be able to create an ad targeted to what that problem is. And that's another way that we can drive traffic that way. So that's kind of how we will leverage the other platforms. Like if you're on Walmart, if you're on, I don't know, Target, whatever, we can't do as much cross-channely. But when it comes to things like social media, it comes to email lists, like PR, that type of stuff, that's where we can really work with it to help drive more to Amazon.
So I'm gonna ask a question that I probably should have asked much earlier, and I feel really bad asking this because I only know about Amazon reimbursements. I literally know nothing else about Amazon except for how to, click buy.
Yeah.
So what exactly is A plus content?
Okay. So A plus content is essentially just below the fold content that highlights features. It could highlight your brand story. It could highlight a variety of different things in both graphic and written content. So um, Amazon claims it helps improve conversion rates. I mean, we do see a small lift, but they claim like I think it's like 5 to 13% increase in conversions. I don't know that I've seen it that much, but it does have an impact. It's a great way for you to explain more of how the product works, how it functions, how to educate consumers, how to let them know other products you have in your catalog, as well as you can do some SEO copy within it, within like the headers and things like that that help index from an SEO standpoint. So there are a few things that you can leverage the A plus content for, but mainly it's more of um, it's a conversion tool to like help consumers understand the product better than anything.
Okay, cool. So along with that, right? As the times change, or as things move on, right? Sometimes you're going to realize that certain things don't necessarily work, right? You have to do A/B testing, right? So sometimes you're going to realize that things aren't working, or some things you're going to realize that things are successful, or even the things that are successful, over time it might not necessarily be relevant. Obviously, it depends on the metrics, right? But how often do you believe, or do you guys usually, start making changes towards the content that's provided for the products, to make sure that they maintain relevancy over time?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly testing, mainly keywords. That's really where we focus. When it comes to images, we'll only like really change those if we see a significant drop off or we see a significant opportunity to improve, like I said, click-throughs or conversion rates. That's really when we make the changes. But in general, like once we start making progress with something and we're seeing continued growth month over month, either from the ad side or the organic side, or ideally both, it's good indication that the content we have is working. Now, if we're seeing for example, ads is leading way more, it's growing way faster than organic. That's an indication that we may want to look at updating the content or updating the keywords to try to improve there. And likewise, like if we're seeing neither is growing, then we might want to look at and revisit and be like, all right, well, what does our click-through rate look like? Why is it so low? Why is our conversion rate so low? How can we change or improve the images and the copy we have at the same time? So there's no set window there. It really depends on how things are trending, and then from there, that's where we really make the adjustments as needed.
Okay, so in which countries do you guys work in, right? Because Amazon is obviously different, throughout, every single region that they're in. It's not also just in English, right? So in what countries do you guys work in? And how do you utilize, I guess localization skills in order to, to get the right information? or
Yeah.
the right content for the right audience?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and we work across a variety of different marketplaces. Obviously, Amazon is the largest. Amazon US is the largest, but we also help on Canada. We help on Mexico, the European marketplaces, UK, Germany, France, Spain, Italy. Those are really the main ones we focus on. We've done a little bit on Japan and Australia in the past, and India actually. And all of those have seen some success, but we've mainly focused on that first set I said. And yeah, dealing with the challenges of localization is definitely hard. In Europe, mainly, we're working with partners for each country to help us with the translations and the localizations of the content to make sure that it aligns with what consumers are searching for. In Mexico, we actually have a lot of our team based here, so a lot of our content is easily produced in Spanish for Mexico, which brings up another important point: is that Spanish in Latin America is not the same as Spanish in Spain. So that's really where the localization comes in. It's very noticeable. So like our content team here in Mexico can write like Mexicans. They can't write like Spaniards. But another good example of this is the marketplaces in Latin America aren't as big, but like Argentina, Colombia, if those Amazon marketplaces existed, copy in Mexico would not convert well in Colombia or Argentina. So again, it's really within languages, there's still a lot of localization that needs to be done. Just like English in the US and English in the UK are different. So there's a lot of very intricate intricacies that go with the SEO and the localization pieces, and it really depends on the marketplaces that we're helping you in.
Right. No, it's actually very funny. I used to be a localization project manager at a high-tech company here in Israel. I was in charge of 25 languages. I was not in charge of English. Even
That's
though I was
interesting.
probably the only English speaker in the entire company. But even so, one of the things that, Spanish happens to be my first language, and I do not speak a jot of it anymore, unfortunately. My first teacher was from Mexico. My second teacher was from Argentina. My third teacher was from Spain. You can
Yeah.
imagine, you know, just the craziness of, just even focusing on how to get along with the different locales of each I guess variety of the languages
Yeah.
or I guess of the language itself, right? So Spanish is one of those languages which is like, in my opinion, one of the most interesting languages. Besides for it just being an awesome language, and having that university in Spain that kind of tries to keep the grammar of Spanish at least the same throughout you
Yeah.
know every Spanish speaking country. It's still very different. So how do
Yeah.
you guys I guess go through the differences for each and every single not just Spanish, but with every single different locale that you have? How do you guys try and work with that to maximize greater returns?
Yeah, and it's actually funny that you bring that up because I'm fluent in Spanish. I live in Mexico. And I do notice
Nice.
the differences between different countries. So I travel in Spain a lot when they use vosotros.
Yes.
That conjugation confuses me a ton, and I still need to think about that sometimes. And even when I'm talking with like Colombians and Venezuelans, it's a lot different than me speaking with like a Mexican or even an Argentinian. I understand Argentinians pretty well. But yeah, there's a lot of differences in variety in the spoken language and grammatically as well. But when it comes to the European marketplaces, yeah, like I said, we really make sure that our partners that we're working with have local experts in each country writing them. So, our writer in Germany is German, our writer in France is French, our writer in Spain is Spanish, our writer in Italy is Italian, so on and so forth. And that is the way that we kind of make sure that we're doing that. Now, when it comes to like keywords, that's obviously another challenge. Typically, we start with the keyword list that our translators are essentially providing us, and then we'll start advertising on that uh, on the uh, on the ad side on Amazon, and then from there we can start identifying more long tail keywords based on the results we're getting from search term reports, based on long tail keyword examples that we're getting once we start researching each of these a little bit more. And yeah, that's kind of how we make sure that we manage it localized for each marketplace in Europe.
Personally, how do you pronounce the double L?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah,
okay, good. I'm proud.
yeah. I'm like I had to think about that for a second. I was like, how do I say this? I was like, I say it every day and I don't even realize it.
All right, backtracking. Okay, what is I guess a tool or professional service that you guys offer, something that you guys have that FBA sellers and vendors just aren't utilizing enough? Like, what is something that you believe they are just not utilizing enough, and you're like, come on.
I think a big piece is the outside traffic. Amazon itself is just getting more and more expensive to advertise on. Like they keep finding new ways to put ads, and the cost of the ads themselves keep increasing every year. Obviously, they want products that are low priced. Another good example of this is Black Friday and Cyber Monday last year, where they created a separate Black Friday page that was different than the rest of Amazon. So
Oh,
like the products that were on deals were only in a section that other products weren't in. So that had to, that's obviously pushing consumers towards products that are lower cost or on a better deal to increase conversions for them and generate sales for them. So back to my point, bringing traffic from outside is extremely important. So working with influencers, working with affiliates, working with publications to get your product noticed, working on paid ads on other platforms. TikTok has been a great source of traffic for a lot of the brands we've worked with. So it's really a matter of figuring out when we think about like the Amazon funnel is like top is brand awareness. How do I bring all of these sources from outside into the top of the funnel? So then I can start working them through on Amazon. I can start with retargeting. I can start with consideration campaigns. I can start with all different types of campaigns to really get them to the product page to actually purchase the product.
wow. Okay, that's awesome. All right, what is one tip besides for, I mean, you can give this as the tip, what you just said, but what's like one tip that you would give an FA Zeller vendor to really boost their traffic or their sales, besides for obviously using you? Yeah.
I would say, I mean, the first thing that we always pretty much do with every client is we audit their advertising right now to identify wasted ad spend. A lot of times companies have a limited ad budget. And if you're not spending it in the right ways, then it's kind of just getting wasted and not leading to the results you want. So that's where we would start. We would look at your wasted ad budget, or where you could start, look at your wasted ad budget, try to allocate it to keywords that are performing, or attempt or create new campaigns that are going to target keywords that you think are performing well. And you can get that from the search term report. You can get that from all your advertising data. So there's a lot of different ideas from targeting from those. That's typically the first place. Like I said, kind of going back to the funnel concept, making sure our click-through rates and our conversion rates are good. And if they're not, then looking at what with my content does not look good. Is it the copy that's not being indexed for organically? Is it the images don't look good? So when someone sees it, they're not clicking on the ad or they're not clicking on the organic listing. Are all of those things kind of like leading to decreases in the key metrics that I talked about earlier? And that's like the way I would focus. And you can more or less do that on your own. Like I said, you can identify wasted ad spend. Do you have keywords that you've spent maybe, or that you've had maybe 20 clicks on, no conversions? That's probably a waste. You're probably not going to convert on that. Do you have a conversion rate that's below 8%? Like that's the baseline on Amazon. If it's below 8%, all right, what can you do to change your copy? How do you get to 8%? So once you kind of start focusing on some metrics like that, you can start really improving how things are going overall.
Cool. Okay. Now, I mean, I think the amount of advertising, agencies just for Amazon. I'm not even talking about e-commerce, or other types of. I'm talking about advertising agencies in general. I don't even think I could count that high. You know how many of them there are, right? But what differentiates you from every other agency?
Honestly, you probably know how many there are better than I do at this point. I have no idea. It seems like there's a new one every single week. Seems like everyone that worked at Amazon at some point is qualified to open up an advertising agency. But no, I think at this point, what differentiates us is we've driven almost $1 billion in sales on Amazon since we started. We're one of the original agencies. Our team at this point is we're approaching 70 people on the team. We have a ton of knowledge and expertise that most of these small boutiques do not have, and that's really where the advantage is. When you get to a certain size, there's just way more knowledge sharing. There's way more situations that people have come across. And as a team, we're able to solve those problems much faster, or in a manner that doesn't affect the sales as much. So I think that's the really thing that differentiates us from most of the other smaller agencies, is that we have a ton of experience, we have a ton of knowledge within our team, and that's what helps us get better results for our clients.
That's really, really awesome. Now, I think hopefully this is the last question I'm going to ask. It could be it's not. We'll find out. Okay. What do you say to companies who They could be big, they could be small, it doesn't matter what size they are, right? Now, they say we have a marketing manager, we have people who are dealing with the ad. Why is it important for them to have an agency like you versus having an internal team?
I think from a cost standpoint, it's obviously much cheaper to use an agency most of the time than it is to hire people internally or hire the level of expertise internally. I mean, when you work with us, you have a team of about 6 people working on your account in a variety of different facets. And for you to hire that internally at your company is going to cost a significant amount of money. I think that's cost advantages is obviously one that makes sense, but I think it is important to have both. I think it's important to have people inside your company or a marketing manager, for example, that is coordinating with a lot of these agencies to get the results you want. And I think that's really where a lot of companies that we see that are e-commerce native are seeing a lot of success. For example, one of the clients we work with does, I think, like 25, 26 million a year through their D2C website. And their marketing manager helps coordinate all of their marketing efforts from all of the different agencies helping drive those results. So like that's where you see a lot of leverage from having someone internally who understands the main objectives of the company and can communicate it correctly to all the agencies and kind of coordinate everything and make sure that they're hitting goals. I think that's kind of the model going forward for a lot of businesses. And I think it makes the most sense from a cost saving standpoint, as well as getting all the knowledge that I just mentioned before.
That's good. That's awesome. Now, I mean, I asked a lot of questions. All right. Is there anything that I did not ask or we did not touch on that you would love to bring up at this point?
I think I mean, we did talk international expansion a little bit or like dealing with localization of different marketplaces. I think that's an important concept. But one of the challenges itself with expanding or getting into different marketplaces is dealing with regulation, dealing with compliance, fiscal challenges. We help a lot with brands that are going to Europe to deal with those types of things. But we also help a lot of foreign brands that want to get into Mexico and Latin America do that as well, because it's even more difficult than getting into Europe. Uh, for a variety of different reasons. You essentially need a business in each country. You need a business partner in each country, tax IDs, bank account, like all of these things. And to add on top of that, it's all in Spanish and a different language
Yes.
and Portuguese in Brazil. So when we talk about the level of complexity that comes with that, uh, it's enormous. And most brands avoid a lot of what's going on in Latin America, but Latin America is growing extremely quickly from an e-commerce standpoint. They're I mean, I think I forgot the most recent numbers. I think like 85% of Mexico and Brazil have purchased products online through their phone. They're mobile first. They're actually buying products online, and most
Wow.
brands aren't taking advantage of it because they don't know how to deal with all the complexities. And that's one thing that we can help with a lot.
Okay. So that's actually really good to know that there are a lot of complexities now. Do you feel, I'm now going to keep asking more questions. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. Don't worry.
So okay, fine. There are all those complexities that I do want to get into, but do you feel that people don't necessarily believe that there's, that there's actually potential in the Latin America, field?
I do. And I think part of the reason for that is actually Amazon's own undoing. They created the NARF program, the North American Remote Fulfillment Program. And another thing to consider is that Amazon's not the biggest platform in Latin America. Mercado Libre is. So
Yes.
there's two different challenges there. Essentially, only half of the customer base is shopping on Amazon, so you're not reaching everybody. And you can only get onto both platforms if you are local in country. And the NARF program actually leads to poorer customer outcomes in Mexico. So, for example, like I said, I live in Mexico. If I want to buy something that has an imported tag on it from the US, well, I know that that imported tag means I'm going to have customs fees, I'm going to have taxes, I'm going to have transportation, all these things that are not included in the actual purchase price on Amazon that are not taken into account. So Amazon was like, oh, let's open up the NARF program. Like, we'll let people in. Well, no, it's actually decreases conversion rates. It also decreases your profitability. When we actually help brands the correct way get into Latin America, they see their Amazon fees decrease. They see their profit margins increase, their conversion rates increase, their sales volume increases. So, like, the NARF program is actually probably one of the worst things that Amazon has created, but it's an attempt to deal with all the complexities that Mexico and Brazil have. And really, the only way to deal with it is tackle it head on and actually open up a business or work with distributors or sellers in each local marketplace.
It's actually funny. Like, when I was talking to Stan Friedlander, he worked at Amazon, Amazon Fashion. First, he was at Macy's, then he worked at Amazon Fashion for, I mean, years, and I mean years. He was there at the very beginning and was one of the people who like brought it to being number one in the world in the fashion industry and the apparel industries. And one of the things that he said is Amazon provided a wonderful opportunity for so many people to have a job, but at the same time, they created more jobs than they probably realized by not necessarily considering certain other things, such as, for example, reimbursement, such as, for example, the North program that you're talking about. What are certain things that you think Amazon could actually do to improve the Latin America conversion rate or entry?
Yeah, that's tough because a lot of it's out of their control. A lot of it comes down to the governments in each of the individual countries.
Isn't Amazon in
Um,
every single government? I'm so confused.
they probably are in every single government, but yeah, no, that's one of the main challenges. And another thing you got to consider is also when we talk about, we talk about workers, Latin America in general is very socialist. So worker protections are a lot higher than company protections, which is a whole different challenge why a lot of these companies have not gotten as involved in some of these marketplaces. To improve the experience for customers, really the only way that Amazon could do it would be by helping brands become more local. I mean, that's what we do, by opening up their own entities or finding their own distributors or their own sellers in marketplace. Otherwise, like there's really not much that's within their control that comes to my mind.
So when if you're like an American seller and you're looking to expand, let's just say you're looking to expand outside, internationally, right? Would you suggest Europe or Latin America first?
Really depends on the type of products. Now, when I talk about like barriers to entry and competition, like Latin
Well, that's
America
the
is
reason why I'm
phenomenal.
asking.
Yeah, well, Latin America is phenomenal because if you solve those problems with barriers to entry, your competitors aren't. So the competition is much lower in Latin America. And the sales volume can be much higher. But again, you also have to deal with the challenges of setting up a business or working with a distributor or a seller to be on all the marketplaces, which is what we solve. I think Europe is generally easier because, or Europe is generally where we recommend expanding first because it's easier. One VAT ID, one value add tax ID in one country gets you access to all the marketplaces. And the sales volume in all those marketplaces is pretty comparable to what it is in Mexico. So generally, I say focus on the Europe side first for expansion. But if you're looking to really be a first mover in a marketplace, then Latin America and Mexico is where you want to be.
That's really interesting. So, like, what are some of the complexities of getting into Latin America then? What makes it so difficult?
Well, for a variety of reasons. The first one is with Mexico. Well, with every country in Latin America, you need to have a business. And pretty much with every country in Latin America, to have a business, you need to have a partner that is local in the country. So if you don't know someone who's Mexican or Brazilian or Colombian or Argentinian, it makes it a whole lot more difficult. That would be the first step. The second is the red tape, dealing with all types of delays in the government, having to pay people to get things moving. Like if you're not here, you're not going to know how that stuff functions. Like for example, I've done this. I've opened up businesses in Mexico, and just to open up a business entity itself took about 4 months. And that
Wow.
wasn't getting a tax ID. Then I had to wait another 3 months to get a tax ID. Uh, it's just a nightmare. Like it takes too long. And that's Mexico. Brazil takes about 18 months to start a business in and get a tax ID. So
Wow.
those are the main challenges. Brazil doesn't have a tax treaty with the US, which is a whole nother challenge when it comes to dealing with taxes. Taxes in Brazil are insane when you actually bring products in. Your import cost for a product over $50 can be close to like 96% of the price. So like that's a whole nightmare. And then logistic challenges can be different depending on country. So like Mexico doesn't have as many because Mexico has a really good network of highways. Brazil doesn't. Most long haul transport in Brazil is by boat. So if you're in the south of the country and you're trying to ship something to the north, it's going by boat. It's not going by car or train or anything else. So those are some of the challenges that most people don't consider. And a lot of that comes into play when it comes to fulfillment, getting the product to consumers. And going back to why the NARF program is such a failure, if you send a product from the US to Brazil and it gets delayed at customs, it gets held up, there's a tax bill, no one pays it, it could sit there for weeks. The customer cancels the order, gets their money back. Now what happens? Your inventory's stuck. So like this is why it's important to be in each of these countries, but to do that, you really need to be focused or need to be working with someone who is really managing the country for you.
I mean, also you get your reimbursements done, through here. Just say against right here. But so with all these complications, getting to Latin America, markets, like, what are the advantages, right? To,
Yeah.
you went through 18 months just to get, just to get to Brazil, right? Like, what, by that point, what do what are your advantages? What are you gaining?
Yeah, so the advantage is the sales volume and the lack of competition. Brazil itself, I mean, has 220 million people, which is 66% of the US. Uh, I think their sales for last year, it might have been the year before. I'm not positive on it. It was like $180 billion in e-commerce sales.
Wow.
So it's a massive market. Because of all these barriers to entries, most foreign brands don't try to get into them. Mexico itself, I think, Mexico is like another 12 billion or 14 billion in online sales. Those are the two biggest marketplaces in Latin America. So like there's a lot of sales volume happening. There's not a lot of people doing it. So because of that, you also see lower cost of advertising. Fees are lower. For example, we just uh, enrolled some products in FBA with the labeling service, and Amazon always charges for labeling in the US. They don't
Yes.
charge for it in Mexico because they want to get more brands in FBA. So like there are specific incentives to brands that make it way more profitable for them to focus on these marketplaces. But like I said, you have to deal with the challenges to do that.
So I mean, this is a very loaded question, but which categories would you recommend for the Latin America market? At least to start,
Yeah. I would start with well, the best category, the number one category is electronics. There's a massive demand for electronics in Latin America for a variety of reasons. That's Mercado Libre is like number one focus, getting electronic companies in, mainly because a lot of these countries in Latin America have bans on Chinese imports.
Oh.
So it actually gives a competitive advantage to North American or European electronic companies that are trying to get in there. So that's the first thing I would mention. Uh, Supplements, personal care. There's a massive market for those types of products as well. And then once you move beyond that, like pet supplies, baby, and toys are like all really good categories as well. So that's kind of like the order of magnitude there. But like I said, electronics, there's a massive demand. There's a whole secondary market for used electronics from the US and Latin America. There's massive, massive money. So there's really big demand for those types of products down here.
Since Amazon is really trying to get into the Latin America, market, and obviously with all these, different restrictions that already these Latin American countries are already putting into place, is you mentioned a few things that Amazon's already doing, that they're being a little more lax or they're being more lenient on, or just negating altogether to to get into those to get into those platforms. Is there anything else that Amazon is currently doing besides with the NERF program? Is there anything else that Amazon is currently doing to help I guess FBA sellers, get into these markets or incentivize them to get into these, into these markets?
I don't know. I actually don't think there's much else that they're helping with. One of the things they're actually doing, which is kind of a deterrent to a lot of these brands, is that they're actually buying the product from the US and then bringing it and selling it in Mexico themselves. And most of these brands aren't authorizing that. So Amazon's just doing that on their own. It's creating a whole lot of problems for them because now it's opening up other markets where they might have distribution agreements in place already, which might be violating map agreements. It honestly creates a huge mess. Like there's really not much Amazon is doing to help solve the problem. They're actually creating more problems for everybody. So, you know, the comment you made before we started, that this would be one of the points where I would say that.
So basically, what I'm hearing is that Amazon should just hire AMZ advisors to get advice on their own
Look,
product.
look, I mean, at the end of the day, like every Amazon seller knows this pretty much, is that Amazon doesn't really care about the sellers, they care about the customers. And they've proved that time and time again. So they're just focused on getting more sales in all these marketplaces, generating more ad revenue. They don't really care how they do it. Obviously, we're the ones like trying to help the sellers be successful in those. So like our focus is how do you do this in the best way possible? And I think that's really where the difference is. Amazon wants to make money from monetizing their platform. If they don't have people coming, if they don't have people buying, they can't monetize the platform. So that's what their incentives are. It's not, they don't have any other incentives to really help sellers be successful down here.
Okay, I mean, does Amazon have any incentives towards anyone to be successful anywhere?
Well, I don't know. As long as everyone
That's
is selling. Yeah, exactly.
Shouldn't have asked that question. No, I'm joking. But no, seriously, like, when you're going through ads, right? You're going through, helping people get into different markets. You're helping people get into different things, right? Like Amazon is literally all over the world, right? And they're trying to be even more all over the world. How, like, is Amazon doing anything towards, the FBA sellers to incentivize them to really go anywhere and everywhere?
No, I think the thing that incentivizes more than anything is FBA. I mean, just from handling the logistics piece, that is incredibly valuable. And I will say that is probably the thing they're doing well, but it's mainly where you see those benefits is Europe. Like FBA in Latin America barely exists. Like Brazil, last I heard, only had one FBA warehouse. Mexico has more, but it's still not a huge number compared to the US. And the only way you can use those fulfillment centers is if you have a tax ID in each of those countries. And the only way you can have a tax ID is if you have a business in each of those countries. And like it just all comes back to like the legal structure that these countries have that make it so much more difficult. So FBA in Europe is phenomenal for expansion. Like it helps deal with a lot of the logistics challenges, but there's not much that FBA can do for you in other marketplaces unless you go by the books and set up a business.
Wow. Okay. Well, cool. Thank you so much, for being on here. I learned an insane amount. I'm just letting you know. I didn't know this much about Amazon, and now I'm very happy I know this much about Amazon because this is phenomenal. Thank you.
No problem, David. I'm glad it was helpful for you.
Yeah. Okay. You have a good one.
You as well.